Hello and welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan John from the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. This is episode 270. That's awesome. That makes me very happy. So we broke the 270 barrier already. Listen, if you have questions, I do my best to answer each and every one. And the reason there's 270 podcasts is because of the questions you find people ask me. So if you have a question, send it to podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. Each and every week, I sit down here in my office and I answer your questions, and it's an honor, and I appreciate it. We have an interesting variation of questions today. Sometimes, it does seem funny how certain questions will just keep showing up over and over in 1 week, and then you don't hear from them for months. This week, we got a couple of interesting, new, and different ones. Toby asks a question. I just have two questions about Olympic lifting. First, I heard you on a recent episode 251, talking about the importance of challenges. Yeah, Toby, challenges and goal setting they sound the same, but I think they're a little bit different. I like, especially in the physical aspect of my life, I like challenges. My favorite all-time challenge is I challenge myself to sleep 12 hours a day for a week. I got to tell you, I've done a lot of, 10,000 swing challenge. I've done triathlons. Gosh, I've competed in a bunch of sports. Trying to get to sleep 12 hours in a week was one of the hardest things I ever did. And I know that sounds insane out loud. As someone who has taken up Olympic lifting recently and enjoying it, do you think doing 2 cycles of the Big 21 program with a week of the transformation in between, as I've heard you recommend, would be a good challenge that involved Olympic lifting? Secondly, what is your opinion of some of the derivatives of the Olympic lifts? The full snatch versus the power snatch versus the muscle snatch. In your opinion, where does the value of these lifts derive? Good question. So big fan of the Big 21 program. For those who don't know it, the hardest thing is the math. Basically, it's 9 workouts, and I would recommend 3 days a week. And it's hard to explain. I have a matrix, an Excel spreadsheet for it. But you start off with a weight, and we're going to do snatches. You do 5 snatches with a weight. You add 5 pounds, you do 5 snatches. You add 5 pounds, you do 5 snatches. You add 5 pounds, you do 1. You add 5 pounds, you do another one. 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 And you add 5 pounds, you do another one. And you're done with your snatches. Then you move on to your clean and press. It's hard. And so that's 21 reps. But what makes it hard is the next workout. Lift 1 was where you started last week, with the last time on set 2. So you add 5 pounds. So day 1, your first set was this weight, and then the second set was 5 pounds heavier. Well, you start the second workout with that. The third workout, you start 5 pounds heavier. The 6th, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, each one nudges up 5 pounds. Hardest part, the first time you do it, is dialing in the right numbers. I've had people put imaginary numbers in, and it just about killed them. So let's say you snatch 200, but you want everyone to think you snatched 225, so you put 225, which means very quickly in the program, you're missing everything because you're coming in tired. So the program's called the Big 21 because you're doing 21 clean and press, 21 snatch, 21 clean and jerks. You say 1 week of the transformation program in between. That's not nearly enough. Even with my athletes, if we can get 1 round of the Big 21 a year, I feel like we're doing pretty well. If we do 2, there needs to be a good size gap between them. So I would say at least 3 weeks. I'd really prefer 8 weeks. And I got to tell you, Toby, if you do 8 weeks of the transformation program after the Big 21 and then slide again to another round of the Big 21, I think good things are going to happen, because that transformation program is very specific conditioning, and it seems to really carry over well. At least it did for us in everything else we did. it might be a better idea to do the big 21 and then do that easy strength for fat loss with Olympic lifting program that you can find on danjohnuniversity.com. And there's a couple variations of it. And the reason there's a couple is because I keep tweaking it to try to make it simpler. And I've noticed that every time I try to make it simpler, I make it more complicated. My favorite variation is when I came up with it for Pat Flynn, and you fast for 15 hours before you do the easy strength. I think it's mostly just, I think it's like 5 sets of 2 in the snatch, maybe 3 clean and jerks. You swap your Olympic lifting boots for your walking shoes. You do 3 sets of 3 in the clean and press, and then you go for a walk. I mean, that's one of the variations, but I like that one. I like that one a lot. And then by the time when you finished that, you had your first meal, and it was a pretty successful little program. Honestly, though, I mean, as every program, it has its limitations. If you choose, and I'm to do the thing you said, the big 21 with 1 week of the transformation program, and then the big 21 again, it's going to work. But I'm going to tell you one thing, and I like the idea. It didn't work in my experience, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes I just screw things up. I'm suggesting the first round of the Big 21, those 3 weeks, is go lighter than you think. So base the program on the 18th workout, the second round of the Big 21. That's when you want to hit the high marks. So come in at the end of the week 1, week 2, week 3 of the first round, come in significantly smaller, lighter than you thought. And give it a go, okay? I like the idea. Okay, he had a second question. Toby has a second question. What is your opinion of some of the derivatives of the Olympic lifts? We can be here all day. I remember reading an article from the Soviet Union with just the number of assistant exercises in those, what you call derivations. Do they have value? Absolutely. So when I was with the Pacifica Barbell Club, Dick Notmeyer, my coach, would only allow me to do full snatch, full clean and jerk, front squat, and then we do jerks, from the rack. And when I went off to college, my teammates did the power movements, and I just decided to, out of nowhere, start doing them. So I started power snatching, and I learned a good lesson. I got really strong in the power snatch, but it did not help my throws nor my squat snatch. But with the power clean, what I found is it helped both my throws and my squat clean. So what I found, and this is an experiment of one, an example of one, but also my coaching career, when it comes to the snatch, squat snatch, I mean, there might be a few assistant exercises that help, but not many. But when it comes to the clean and jerk, it seems like everything helps. Heavy military seem to help. Heavy front squats seem to help. Deadlifts seem to help. So the clean and jerk, because it is I was about to say a simpler movement, but your timing can be off a tiny bit in a clean and jerk and you still make the lift. But in the snatch, it's real hard. So now my perfect world. So I would, to answer your question, squat snatch, and don't vary, and then power clean. My senior year at Utah State, and I think I've mentioned this before, basically all I did was squat snatch and power clean. My bench and my squat were in places that I really didn't need to improve, so I kept those relatively light, and I just tried to knock those lifts through the roof. When I went back to Olympic lifting meets after my senior year, my clean and jerk really took off because of that. I hope this helps. So Toby, it's not a great answer I gave you. I will say this. I remember Kim Goss coming back from a workshop and showing me this exercise, and I did it for a few weeks just to learn how to do it. I think it was the muscle snatch, in fact, when it first kind of showed up. And it was, at the time, it was called the snatch extension, I think. That was the name that the Cubans called it. Robert Uridio or something like that. So there is great value in learning these other exercises and getting a sense of them, but then you always have to run it through the lens of, did that exercise help you snatch and clean and jerk more? And that's always the $1 million question. And that's why I love what I do, because track and field is measured with tape measures and timers. Olympic lifting is measured by the bar. So you instantly know, in a sense, if something's working or not. If your lifts go up, you're making gains, it's working. So stick with it. If your lifts don't go up and you're not making gains, then it's not working. Okay? Good question, and thank you. Good first question. Logan asks kind of a interesting question because of the second sentence. 32-year-old lifelong lifter here. I'm sick of the deadlift. I love that line. I simply want to rotate it out for a good long time. 3 movements I love and plan on rotating in are the kettlebell swing, the heavy sandbag over the bar. I do strongman and love this movement. Well, I think that's great. And farmer walks of all kind. And I think that's a good combination. I recall you crushed a deadlift PR to meet without training. Yeah, I never trained the deadlift because I didn't need to. I just didn't. Of course, as I said in the last podcast, when you're snatching, clean and jerking all the time, you're getting that movement in, plus a little bit of ballistic. That's sort of what I'm trying to go for here. Being able to crush the movement, if need be, but not necessarily train it because I hate it. But he likes the idea of being strong at it. And then he has a nice little PS, and I got to thank you so much. He picked up the armor building formula, and will be doing it later. It's the best read since Mass Made Simple, in my opinion. Well, anytime you like my work, I appreciate it, okay? If you're someone like I am, I would even say I'm a journeyman powerlifter, would be a kind of a stretch, but in Olympic lifting, it's like playing the violin. You have to do the Olympic lifts. I think in powerlifting, and I would even say the conjugate method people would agree with me, at least on the concept here, is you can build up those lifts by chasing strength in other similar movements. Now, as I just answered the question about Olympic lifting, I'm not sure in Olympic lifting this works. I also know this, that if you're a kettlebell enthusiast, chasing strength as a power lifter or an Olympic lifter is going to make you better in the kettlebell, most of the kettlebell movements, especially if you're struggling with the snatch test for a cert. I don't know, when you go in an Olympic lift for 6 months and compete in 4 meets and snatch 300 and clean and jerk 400 or whatever, I can pretty much tell you that when you pick up that 24 kilo bell, you're probably be a lot stronger than when you went in before this whole experiment. If you really want to build your deadlift, to me, it does help to be born a deadlifter, be extremely short, have really long arms. Right here, I've got Bob Peoples' book, and if you just look at the way he's built, you can kind of see that he's sort of born to be a deadlifter. He's got really, really, really long arms, and then and huge hands, and it looks like from his neck to his torso, kind of got like something you see in a Looney Tune, like someone squashed him down a little bit. And it helps have long legs too. So I was told for some positions, for some techniques, and then somebody else told me that actually for the other, and I think it's the sumo, it helps to have a different kind of body type. Can you train the deadlift without doing the deadlift? Yes. I actually think for a lot of the people I work with, their deadlift will go up when we focus on anything ballistic. You're talking about the kettlebell swing and this heavy sandbag over the bar thing. And of course, farmer walks, which is going to build your grip. That to me is that classic thing we call the what the heck effect. When you do something over here and it helps you over there. It's interesting because I find the what the heck effect happens in my own life. I go to a friend's birthday party, I meet somebody, I start sponsoring this jazz festival, And then all of a sudden at the jazz festival, I meet all these people and all these other doors open up. How did this all happen? Oh, I went to a birthday party. That's a what the heck effect in real life. And then sometimes we get the what the heck effect very commonly with the kettlebell swing. I wrote an article about it a long time ago. Might not mean much to many of you, but I threw the men's javelin at a meet, 54 meters, about 177 feet. Now, the reason that's interesting is that my own personal record before that time was 90 feet. Now, a couple things for total honesty. Bill Witt really helped me with my javelin technique. We were both in Ohio and Southern California, and we had these huge spaces of time in California where he just worked on me with my javelin technique. Having said that, at the same time, I was also doing a lot of kettlebell swings, and I added, now, I mean, to go from 90 feet to 177, obviously there's going to be technical improvements, but there's got to be more than that because my technique wasn't horrid. So it also tells you how bad of a javelin thrower I was before I improved. But there's a picture of me in the article for Dragon Door. I'm like that after the release of the throw, because nobody thought I could throw the javelin that far, including all my competition and all my friends. And it's that what the heck effect. So the what the heck effect is when you do something like swings and you throw the javelin farther. You do monkey bars and none of the javelin throwers you start doing monkey bars and none of my javelin throwers got hurt that season. You do this and this happens. And it's the whole causation correlation thing. And I understand that. But when it happens to you, it's pretty cool. So yeah, I would say I love your choices here. And let me know how it goes. And leave the deadlift alone. You make sure you have fun in your training and do well in your strongman competitions. Thanks for that question. Zach asked a question that I'm not sure I completely know the answer. Curious about your thoughts on keeping the elbows attached to the sides during the kettlebell swing, the so-called T-Rex swing. I know some trainers in the workout that shall not be named community who insist on this technique, but I'm not sure why. When I was taught the kettlebells at my first RKC in San Jose, a long time ago, almost 20 years ago now, we were told clearly that we needed to get here. For me, it's between the height I need to get is between my sternum, my xiphoid process, and my belly button. So right about here, between your sternum and your belly button is where you want to hit that bell. So for me, I always measure people by this drill we call the vertical plank. And you put your arm straight like that, and then I come up, or you can use a wall, a desk, this, and you get as tall as you possibly can, and you pull down hard. And when you do that, you feel your abs, your glutes, everything lock up. I don't know if you can do that drill in the T-Rex position. So for me, and Zach, this is just, this is me seeing how, so I think the vertical plank in any hinge movement you do, if you did vertical planks and hip thrusts because you can't do kettlebell swings, I think you get the benefit, almost most of the benefits of the kettlebell swing, much simpler. I mean, I can teach the hip thrust in, I don't know, it seems like seconds. The famous Mr. Contreras teaching me in a hotel lobby in Las Vegas, the hip thrust. And it didn't even make people, no one even stopped to check out me and Brett. It was hilarious in the group of us. It was just funny to think about it. But the hip thrust is you can teach very quickly. The vertical plank you can teach very quickly. But in both, this position here, which I emphasize in the hip thrust too, to activate the ab wall, I'm not sure you can do it with T-Rex arms. So I like the idea of making the abs contract in the swing. And I'm just not sure you can do it with that style. Honestly, I don't, no matter what comes up in the last few years, somebody finds a better way to do it or different. And then we become divided and we all hate each other. I don't know why you would do that, but if you do it and that's how you do it and that's how you're taught, and you're getting the results you want, then yeah, I'm okay with it. But if you keep saying, I hear all these great things about the kettlebell swing, and you do them like this, maybe that's the problem and not the exercise. A little unsure of my footing right here, Zach, because I'm not sure why they do it, because it's really the opposite of what the great kettlebell users do. So thank you. It's a good question, and I will, maybe I'll get some feedback about why. So I have a question from Joshua. Simple question this week. I am 52. That's an interesting question. Somewhat fat around my midsection, but in pretty good shape. What do you think of doing 1 to 5 deadlifts and complementing, let's reread that. What do you think of doing 1 to 5 reps with the deadlift and complementing them, or doing a complex with barbell deadlifts? For instance, I work out in my garage and I like doing reps of 1 to 2 to 3 reps of dead stop deadlifts, which is the way you should deadlift. Not that heavy, but a weight I can handle, but still feel I'm working my muscles. And then I'm actually doing loaded carries right after, and then run around the block, and then repeat that for 5 or 6 or 7 rounds. What do you think about that? I think I love it. Nick Alo used to train with me at my house when I was over there on Brister Drive. And we would, because of some certain needs at the time, we would often add a run or a walk between our rounds. Here at my home gym, now we do, it's something a little different, but it's in the same ballpark. We'll often do, this is a weather related issue with the snow, but one of the things we'll do, it doesn't sound like much, but we might do a tonic exercise, one of Tim Anderson's original strength. Do it for 2 minutes, pop up, and then do a heavy hand loop around my block. My block's about 1/4 mile. So if you do that 8 times, you're getting yourself a mile, 2 miles of heavy hands, plus all that other stuff. Now, if we were doing alternate presses, followed by a heavy hand walk, we'd really be ramping things up. I like the idea. Now, you said running. I mean, I like the idea of combining running, sprinting, walking, heavy hands, rucking with anything. Generally because of ease and laziness, I always put these at the end of my workouts. But the way you do it is quite good. He then goes on to say this. When I work out like this, even if I put in a complex of bench press with overhead double kettlebell presses and loaded carries and do that complex for 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, I feel great afterwards. So what do you think about that? Well, I think you feel good. We got that workout. I call them lift and sprints now. But you do a set of goblet squats for 8, throw the bell and sprint. You do a set of goblet squats for 8 and run up a hill. You do a set of overhead squats and run up a hill or a sprint. We don't do many rounds of it, but when we're all done, everything seems focused, and I can't, you feel like you're alive, you're ready to go. That feeling you get after a good workout. And you might only do 3 rounds of that if the weight's heavy enough and the run's far enough. But I like this. I think why? You're asking, why do I feel so great after these lift and sprint workouts? Or why do we feel so good after doing complexes followed by a run or a walk? Like my athletes, they do complexes and then go for a walk. Why do you feel so great? I think it's because you are knitting and blending what it means to be a human person. You're doing all this movement, you're doing this general kind of cardio, whatever you want to call it, movement, and you're blending. It's interesting, Stu McGill talks about in The Gift of Injury, walking before meals to make your back feel good. I've got Steve's book here somewhere, Steve Persall's book here somewhere, God Mode, where he talks about taking a 10-minute walk after every meal is as good as taking metformin. I think movement makes us happy. And if we're doing something like complexes followed by a walk, for doing something like your great circuits here. I do like this one here. The bench press, double kettlebell press, loaded carry, and maybe walk. You're unleashing the human spirit, the human body, I think. For those of you who have done workouts like Joshua was talking about here, I think all of you probably know what I'm trying to explain poorly. It's just that feeling of, everything just blending together. When I do my easy strength for fat loss with Olympic lifting, so I do the Olympic lifts, or including front squats and some of them, and then I put on my walking shoes, or what I do now is I do clean and press last. So I take off my lifting boots, put on my walking shoes, and the moment I finish that last clean and press, I go walk. Yeah, you get back and you just feel like everything is lined up. Tim Anderson talks about this with his original strength work, about how exhausting something like crawling can be, or skipping. But when you do it for the rest of the day, especially if you blend in the skipping exercises with floor-based exercise that looks kind of, there's one called the fro zone that looks kind of like a skip, when you do those, you just light up your nervous system and you feel good. It's not a great answer, I know. But I know what I'm trying to say. But it's hard because it's a feeling. Try to explain love. Yesterday on FaceTime, my granddaughter, who's just little, she's a newborn. She's just learned how to smile, and as I was talking to her, she lit up into a big smile. And how do you explain that feeling? Because it's weird, because that's kind of the feeling I get when I do my Olympic lifting followed by my walking. It's not as great as having a newborn smile at you, but it's pretty close. Hey, fun time. Thank you, Joshua. Brad sends a question. I like it because he started off kind of like that one Dan Patrick show where you tell your weight and height. Brad says, 38-year-old male, 195 pounds, is 6'1". Bing! Dealing with all extreme fatigue from lifting weights and exercising in general, stemming from low T, low testosterone. Hopefully you got it measured and not just, Is easy strength appropriate while I work on bringing up my T levels? Or would Dan recommend something different? Does he have a lifting protocol for increasing testosterone? Not training for any sport specifically, just to stay healthy and enjoy my family as long as possible. I'm not a fan of testosterone replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy, only because it seems like, to me, a lot of times people are taking a sledgehammer to an issue versus, I don't know where this is going. The more I read up, it's interesting how many fitness influencers are on testosterone replacement therapy. A very, very famous person online said for years that the reason he looked so good is because, he had meat and a piece of cantaloupe for breakfast. And later, I guess, admitted that he was on TRT. And it's like, well, which is it, Low testosterone, first off, for men especially, testosterone levels really do dance with your body fat levels. So at 38, I would say you're fairly young for low T. I sure hope you're getting doctor's help on this. And if you do go on TRT or HRT, please, there's no moral on me. Whatever you have to do to keep your health, I'm in. But the first thing I want you to think about is your body fat level. And then from there, how do we want to deal with it? I found it really interesting because in the last few years, I've been reading up a lot from Brad Pillen and some other people on fasting and some of the other stuff, because I think the toolkit I used to use to help people with fat loss was wrong. I fell into the same idea of, how do you deal with fat loss? Well, you make the person eat 8 times a day versus, Brad's book is Eat, Stop, Eat. You have to have a time to stop eating. One of the reasons I moved to intermittent fasting, well, let's just go through how I address this at my age. You know, and I'm a full 30 years older than you, and I'm fine in that area. But I sleep. So the first thing I want you to think about, Brad, and I know I feel like I'm a broken record when I go through this, but my good night's sleep is really important to me because I think that's the best thing I can do for recovery, for my mental health, and my overall physical health. I do take a sleep supplement, and this isn't an ad because I get nothing from them. I use Hibernate, and if you're on my Wandering Weights, I have a link for a fairly nice savings of 60%. And I don't remember at the top of my head what it is. I get nothing for that, by the way. It's a product I like and a product I enjoy. Hibernate helps me sleep, and as I often joke, and it's cheaper than Scotch. How's your sleep doing? This is the first question. How is your sleep doing? Because if you don't take care of your sleep, then all this stuff is, yeah, you can do the injections or the pills or whatever, however it gets into your system. That's fine, but we got to address the sleep issue. And it's funny because I'm striving now to get 9 hours of sleep every night, and people keep asking me how I do it. And the answer is this: I go to bed. You know, I don't stay up watching things late at night. You know, on my social calendar, occasionally, you know, I'll go to a jazz concert or, you know, something like that, and I'll get home a little late. But that's rare. Most of the time, I try to be in bed as early as I can because I'm striving long term to be as long. I want to be around as long as I can because I have, you know, I've got 2 new grandbabies, and I want to be around for them. You know, I want to be around. So, how's your sleep? How's your sleep hygiene? Is your room dark? Is your mattress good? Is it at a cooler temperature? I like Hibernate because it assists me with getting to sleep. 9 hours sleep. The first thing I do in the morning, of course, is I start drinking coffee and I get rid of all my work, my business work, and then I do a workout. But I only lift 3 days a week, and I focus on big lifts, appropriate reps, appropriate sets, and appropriate load. And I always walk after. After I get done with my walk, I have a meal, high protein, lots of veg. I do some other things too, sauerkraut, kimchi. I am drinking more smoothies in the last few months because I'm trying to figure out ways. So I have a Vitamix, and the nice thing about a Vitamix is that you keep all the fiber and you keep all this, you know, all you're doing is, and I tell you something, you can make kale taste really good with vanilla protein and berries. I'm just telling you. Who to believe you can make kale taste good. And then later in the day, I do another protein and veggies meat, but I also meditate. So let's go through what I'm talking about here. Sleep helps your T levels. Fasting seems to have some support of of your T levels. Now, it could be because of the body fat losses, and it could be because of the magic of fasting. Please get an expert. I like Brad Pillon's work on there. I like Lean Gain's work on there. John Berardi did a nice little series years ago on intermittent fasting that I thought was really quite good too. Fasting seems to help. You'll notice I mentioned protein. I'm supposed to get in 150 grams a day of protein, according to my nutritionist, which is a lot of protein, at least if you're measuring it. Those are all simple ones. And of course, are you lifting weights? Any of you want, if anybody's on a diet or using fasting to lose body fat, but they're not lifting weights, I think they're missing the secret. But there is no secret. Are there supplements that you can help you with your T levels? It does seem that sunlight exposure helps. It's interesting because sunlight, vitamin D, let's just say sunlight because, okay. Sunlight seems to help with body fat levels. And now, chicken or egg time, does losing the body fat help you with T, or does sunlight help with your T and that helps lower your body fat? I don't know. But if you're not doing those basics, Brad, I want you to reconsider just the fundamentals and the basics. The next thing is before you even try anything like a replacement. Now this is medical advice. I have to be a little careful here, but I'd sure like to have you get a baseline, do some fairly simple interventions, more sleep, more sunlight, lift weights, go for a walk, eat protein, and then do a follow-up test, 8 weeks or so later, or whatever, longer if you want, and just really see if those simple interventions made a difference. That's what I think. I'm never comfortable talking about testosterone, to be honest with you, or if you read Heidegger's book, The Physiology of Strength, he's got that last little part in the book, the little blurb where he talks about that they're starting to experiment with testosterone and the improvement is nonstop. Testosterone is a hormone and it does wonderful things, but like anything, if you abuse it too long, you do set up a whole other set of issues that might be a problem for you if you're thinking about your longevity, okay? This isn't a sermon. This is not a homily. This isn't me pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just see if you can do it the natural way before you think of anything else. I learned this lesson from my coach, Dick Nottmeyer, who famously told me about anabolic steroids. He said, well, it jumps you ahead about 2 years. But he then stopped and he said, but the problem is you don't get those 2 years of lessons. So if you can fix a problem by going from 6 hours sleep to 9 hours sleep, that's a good lesson for the rest of your life. If you can fix a problem by eating more protein, that's a pretty good lesson in life. I hope I helped. I try not to be preachy on that one, but please consider the basics before you do anything else, okay? Thank you. Rebecca, I'm a fellow Utahn, and I've been using and enjoying your Easy Strength program. I have a 16-year-old daughter who would like to get involved in working with me. Something like Easy Strength, but geared to her specific limitations. She's paralyzed below the knees, plus her glutes are paralyzed. She uses both forearm crutches and is a wheelchair to get around. She's also very small for her age, 4'3" and 70 pounds. She has become less active as she's gotten older, and I'd like to get her started on an exercise program that is doable, but not too long, that she can do for the rest of her life and help prevent becoming weak due to such sitting. I was thinking overhead dumbbell presses, pull-ups, and or hanging knee raises on rings. We already have these in our garage, and we can adjust them to her height. I like where you're heading here with the idea of the whole suspension trainer system. I like that. I think it's the thing I like about suspension trainers. If something bad happens, just let go and get your balance. Or in her situation, she can just let go and be fine. I like that. She can do the ab wheel or planks from her knees if I hold her feet, but because she can't do bridges because of no glutes. Thank you. The legs are tricky, and I'm a little stumped for ideas. She does have strong quads, but weak hamstrings. Is there an exercise that targets just the hamstrings that she could do without having glute function? That she could do sitting or lying down. Weight-bearing exercise will help her out with bone strength, but she can't go long distances with her crutches before tiring out. So I was thinking a shorter distance with slightly weighted backpack. Rebecca, you're a good mom. So, I mean, every mom's a good mom, but that's impressive the way you're thinking this. She's also been doing archery from her wheelchair, and I was wondering if there's any specific exercises we can add to help build strength for holding and drawing the bow, or if you think just shooting the bow will be enough. Well, I got to tell you, Rebecca, first off, a salute to you. And that's you're a good person, and what a thanks for sharing all that. And I hope all the listeners heard what she's doing for her child, but at the same time, how she's thinking around the issues. In a home gym, you usually won't see a leg curl machine. But one thought I had here at the gym, we go through the number one thing that breaks the most in my gym is ankle weights. And I don't know what we do. I have no idea why ankle weights can't survive my gym, but they're always spilling out that sand or whatever that stuff is inside. Here's a thought I had for her leg, biceps, and maybe some, anything else that might work out. Get yourself a fairly light set of ankle weights, and you can either, if it's too light, you can double them up, but putting them on her ankle, and while she's on her crutches, have her do leg curls with that. I would suggest before you do that, though, I would do at least 3 workouts of no weight leg curls, because if you cramp up in the hamstrings, I don't know how you uncramp them. Hamstring cramps are right up there with some of the most miserable cramps you can have. So maybe 3 sessions of unweighted leg curls, and then if you can, if it works out, try the ankle weights. Now, obviously, there's things like iron boots. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. A friend of mine had them, and they were so old. The leather straps in them were just. I think it was pterodactyl leather. So that's an idea straight off. So try the leg curls on the crutches, point up. Keep expanding your knowledge of the suspension trainer work. I think I got that right. You have rings. You may even have to, the rings are fine. Yeah, I was about to change. The rings are perfect, no problem at all. But keep expanding the exercises you do there. So, we can probably do rows. We can probably do T's, Y's, I's. We have an exercise, we call them front levers, but where you just pull down as best you can. You might even be able to, obviously, get her to curl and then turn away and do tricep extensions as best you can. One thing I did, I have one of my students, and the video is here on my YouTube site somewhere. His name's Liam, a really nice guy. He's one of my students over at St. Mary's, and he's in a wheelchair. And one of the things he taught me, and it just made me very happy, is he uses loaded carries in wheelchairs for his wheelchair basketball athletes. And what he told me was interesting. He can see, and it was funny because when he demonstrated, it made total sense to me, is I wouldn't go too heavy at first, but he would have his athlete pick up something from this side and put it down on this side, at first just the basketball. And you can see how they compensate. So very often, the athlete will only pick up the basketball on one side because there's issues going to the left side. So he does loaded carries there. So for the wheelchair archery, one of my thoughts is if we could do any exercises involving carries, especially those. Now these are gonna be light medicine balls. Light. I can't even define light for you. You might want to just start with a basketball or any ball you have. You pick it up and you put it down on the other side, pick it up, put it on the other side. Over time, obviously, we're going to do progressive resistance exercise, and we're going to chase some heavier loads, again, within reason. With her weighing only 70 pounds, you might be able to get away with, just very light loads for a long time. But experiment with some ideas. And then when you go to archery practice, try, this is what strength coaches, this is what we do for a living, okay? Ask questions about, like, for example, as she pulls, where does she feel unstable? And then try to find those positions. And then over time, we can sprinkle some exercises that help with those specific issues. Rebecca, I'm easy to find here in Utah. I'm at your service if I may. Okay. Wow, that was an interesting set of questions today. And thank you all for your honesty and kindness. I think Rebecca's story is something, a good one to finish with. Very often, some of us forget that not all of us are, worried about going from a 400-pound bench press to a 500. So there you go. That was fun. That was episode 270. Remember, if you have questions, and what gets us these episodes is your questions, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Each and every week, I sit down in this office and I answer your questions, and it's an honor. So thank you so much, and let's talk again soon.